I noticed it the moment my hand-carved wooden sculpture hit the polished marble tabletop. That split second of contempt in my son-in-law's eyes before he masked it with a practiced smile. Ah, what a cute little souvenir from a flea market. Is this old man retirement art? Thanks, George, but next time bring a bottle of wine. The laughter that rippled through his lavish birthday party cut deeper than any battlefield shrapnel I'd carried in my body for 50 years. But I didn't flinch. I simply smiled, placed my creation on the mantelpiece, and retreated to the corner of the room. Nobody noticed the tremor in my hands or how I gripped my walking cane just a little tighter. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. My name is George Anderson. I'm 76 years old, and I've lived a simple life built on hard work and quiet dignity. The wooden sculpture Anthony Thompson mocked that evening was an oak tree with deep roots, something I spent weeks carving with these arthritic fingers. It represented everything I believed in: family, strength, endurance. It was the last gift I ever gave him. I wasn't always alone in this world. For 30 beautiful years, I had my Margaret, the kindest woman God ever created. We weren't wealthy by any means. I was a carpenter by trade. She taught second grade at the local elementary school. But we were rich in the ways that mattered. Our modest home was always filled with laughter, especially once our Stephanie came along. Margaret died when Stephanie was 15. Breast cancer, the kind that moves quickly and shows no mercy. Suddenly, it was just me and my teenage daughter against the world. I remember sitting at our kitchen table the night after the funeral, surrounded by casserole dishes from well-meaning neighbors, looking at our family budget with new eyes. "We'll be okay, sweetheart," I told Stephanie, who was picking at her food. "I promise you that." And I kept that promise. I took on extra carpentry jobs on weekends. I fixed up old furniture and sold it at flea markets. I learned to cook, clean, and even braid hair, though Stephanie kindly never mentioned how terrible I was at that last one. Most importantly, I saved every penny I could for her college fund. "Dad, you don't have to do this," she'd say when I'd turn down a new pair of work boots even though the old ones were splitting at the seams. "Your education is what matters," I'd reply. "Your mother would want that." When Stephanie got accepted to State University's business program with a partial scholarship, I was the proudest man alive. The day I drove her to campus, my truck loaded with her belongings, I felt both heartbroken and fulfilled. My little girl was becoming the woman her mother and I had dreamed she would be. College changed Stephanie. Not in bad ways necessarily. She became more confident, ambitious, driven. But she also started moving in different circles. The friends she brought home during breaks wore designer clothes and talked about summer homes and European vacations, things I couldn't provide. "You should see Jessica's father's law firm, Dad," she'd say. "They have an actual art collection in the lobby." I'd nod and smile, hiding the ache in my chest. "That sounds nice, honey." In her junior year, Stephanie met Anthony Thompson. He was everything I wasn't. Polished, educated, from a good family with connections and old money. He spoke with confidence about investments and business strategies that were foreign to me. When they got engaged after graduation, I forced a smile and welcomed him to our family. "I appreciate that, George," he said, the first time he called me by my first name instead of Mr. Anderson. I didn't correct him. I wanted Stephanie to be happy. Their wedding was an elaborate affair that emptied most of my savings account. I sold the oak dresser I'd been saving for a special occasion, the last piece Margaret and I had bought together, to help pay for the flowers Stephanie had her heart set on. "You shouldn't have, Dad," she said when I handed her the check. "What else am I saving for?" I replied with a smile. After they married, I saw less and less of my daughter. Phone calls became shorter, visits more infrequent. When they bought their first home in an upscale neighborhood, I offered the only thing I could, my help with renovations. "Oh, we've hired professionals," Anthony said smoothly, "but thanks for the offer." I nodded, swallowing my pride. What did a retired carpenter know about modern homes anyway? But I never stopped trying. When they needed a reliable car, I gave them my 5-year-old sedan, practically new by my standards. When they needed help with the down payment on a bigger house, I withdrew from my modest retirement fund. When my grandchildren were born, I made each of them wooden toys by hand, trains and dollhouses that Anthony would later replace with plastic electronic gadgets. I kept telling myself that it was enough to be allowed in their lives at all, that Stephanie's happiness was worth any price, that her pulling away from me was natural. She was making her own life, her own family. But there were moments that cut deep, like when Anthony would explain simple concepts to me as if I couldn't possibly understand them, or when Stephanie would quickly change the subject whenever I mentioned a memory from her childhood, especially if it involved her mother. Or when I'd arrive for dinner and hear Anthony whisper, "Your dad's here, hide the good scotch." They thought I didn't hear these things, or maybe they didn't care if I did. The invitation to Anthony's 40th birthday celebration came as a surprise. It was being held at their home, a sprawling mansion in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, the kind of place where the gardener made more money than I ever had. "It's black tie, Dad," Stephanie emphasized over the phone. "Anthony's inviting some really important people from work." "I'll dust off my old suit," I promised, though I knew it was hopelessly outdated. I spent weeks on that wooden sculpture. My hands aren't what they used to be, and the intricate root system took particular patience. Each night I'd work under the lamp in my workshop, carving and sanding until the piece was perfect. I sealed it with the finest finish I had, buffing it until it gleamed like honey in sunlight. The night of the party, I arrived early, clutching my small wrapped package. Stephanie greeted me at the door with a quick, distracted hug. "Dad, you're the first one here," she said, glancing over my shoulder. "The caterers are still setting up." "I can help," I offered. No, she said quickly. "Just have a seat in the living room. Anthony will be down soon." I sat alone for almost an hour, watching staff in black uniforms arrange elaborate flower displays and set up a bar with bottles I couldn't pronounce the names of. When Anthony finally appeared, he was on his phone, barely acknowledging me with a nod. As the house filled with guests in expensive suits and cocktail dresses, I felt increasingly out of place. No one spoke to me, except to ask if I could move so they could get by. I heard someone whisper, "I think that's the father-in-law. Worked with his hands or something." When it came time for gifts, Anthony opened each one with exaggerated enthusiasm. Golf clubs from colleagues, an expensive watch from Stephanie, rare bottles of liquor, signed first editions, and then my small package. The moment he unwrapped it, I saw his expression shift from anticipation to disappointment, then to that mocking amusement that would haunt me for months afterward. "Ah, what a cute little souvenir from a flea market. Is this old man retirement art? Thanks, George, but next time bring a bottle of wine." The laughter in the room felt like a physical force pushing me backward. I watched Stephanie's face. Not anger or defense of her father, just embarrassment and a quick glance around to see if any of the important guests were judging her. That night, after returning to my small house, I sat in my workshop surrounded by the tools that had defined my life's work, tools that had built houses, furniture, a life for my family, tools that Anthony Thompson saw as quaint and irrelevant, just like their owner. I pulled out the folder containing my will, the one I'd been working on for months, trying to be fair and generous to everyone, the one that divided my modest estate between Stephanie, my grandchildren, and yes, even Anthony. I'd included him because I thought it was the right thing to do, because despite everything he was family now, but something had broken inside me at that party, something I couldn't repair with wood glue and clamps. The next morning, I called James Harrington, my attorney and one of the few friends I had left from my generation. "I need to make some changes," I told him. James didn't ask questions. He'd known me long enough to understand that I didn't make decisions lightly. "Come by the office tomorrow," he said. "We'll take care of it." The new will was simple. Stephanie and my grandchildren would still receive their shares, but Anthony's portion was completely removed. In its place, I wrote a letter to be read after my death, explaining exactly why I had made this change. The value of a gift, I wrote, isn't measured by its price tag or its prestige. It's measured by the thought, effort, and love behind it. A hand-carved sculpture might seem worthless to someone who only values things that can be bought, but to the one who made it, who poured hours of work and years of skill into its creation, it's priceless. I sealed the letter and handed it to James. "Are you sure about this, George?" he asked. "More sure than I've been about anything in a long time," I replied. The months that followed were quiet ones. I saw less of Stephanie and her family, though I never refused an invitation when it came. I continued to send birthday cards to my grandchildren with small checks enclosed. I attended Christmas dinner at their house, bringing store-bought wine instead of anything I had made. If Anthony noticed the change in me, he didn't mention it. Perhaps he was relieved that the embarrassing old carpenter had finally learned his place. When the pain in my chest started, I didn't tell anyone at first. What was the point? But when I collapsed in my workshop one afternoon, my neighbor found me and called an ambulance. The hospital contacted Stephanie, who arrived looking genuinely worried. "Dad, why didn't you say something?" she asked, holding my hand as I lay connected to beeping machines. "Didn't want to bother you," I replied truthfully. "That's ridiculous. You're my father." For a moment I saw the little girl who used to climb into my lap after skinning her knee, seeking comfort only I could provide. But then Anthony arrived, checking his watch impatiently, and the moment passed. I died 3 weeks later. Peacefully, they tell me. In my sleep, in my own bed, surrounded by the furniture I had built with my own hands over a lifetime. I wasn't there for the reading of the will, of course, but James told me later what happened. Stephanie was shocked but composed when she received her portion. The grandchildren's trusts were set up exactly as planned. And then came the moment when Anthony realized his name wasn't mentioned at all. "There must be some mistake," he insisted, his face flushing with anger. "George and I had an understanding." James shook his head. "There's no mistake, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Anderson was very clear about his wishes." "This is ridiculous. I'll contest it. I have rights as a family member." "You're welcome to try," James said calmly. "But first, Mr. Anderson left a letter to be read at this time." As James read my words aloud, describing the wooden sculpture and what it represented, Stephanie began to cry. Not the delicate, composed tears she had shed at my funeral, but deep, racking sobs of realization and regret. Anthony stormed out before the letter was finished. But Stephanie stayed, listening to every word. When James finished reading, he handed her the letter, along with a small package I had left for her. Inside was another wooden sculpture, this one of a mother and daughter standing side by side. On the bottom, I had carved a simple message: "Love leaves the deepest roots." That evening, Stephanie went home and found the oak tree sculpture still sitting on the mantelpiece where I had placed it months before. She picked it up, running her fingers over the intricate roots, seeing for the first time the craftsmanship that had gone into it. Turning it over, she found words I had carved into the base. "Respect is the root of any inheritance." My final gift wasn't the sculpture itself, nor was it the money and property I left behind. It was a lesson about value, not the kind that's measured in dollars, but the kind that's measured in dignity. A lesson that Anthony Thompson would never learn, but that I hoped my daughter still could. In the end, I didn't leave this world seeking revenge. I left it seeking justice, not just for myself, but for everyone whose worth has ever been dismissed because they worked with their hands instead of shuffling papers in an office, for everyone who's ever been made to feel small because they didn't have the right connections or the right accent or the right address. And perhaps, in some small way, I left it seeking justice for that oak tree sculpture, a piece of my heart that deserved better than mockery. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Did you ever have someone underestimate your worth? Tell us about it. To hear the next story, just click on the box on the screen. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, true value isn't in what we possess, but in how we treat others.